God began to talk to me and tell me that the time of buried information being made public in America is now here. I don't know if it's here immediately or if we are in a long period whereby this information will start to come out. But God said that the time of hidden things is now, and specifically buried information that was hush hush, top secret, is what will be coming out. And he said, excuse me, please, that this is information of the type that government agencies hold and keep secret. So his exact statement was that formerly redacted papers will be published for the public to know certain things. And one of the first things that the Lord said is that papers that were redacted that explain in detail how the popular figure in the car was killed will be published. He said all the redactions on those documents will be removed and the information will be brought forward in full. And that will be done because it's an attempt to bring closure and to resolve sorrow and guilt that exists in America concerning the assassination of the popular figure in the car. Now, you don't even need me to say his name to know who this is.
President Kennedy has been assassinated. It's official now. The president is dead.
This was the darkest day in American history. 3 clips from different angles captured the moment President Kennedy was assassinated. On November 22, 1963, President Kennedy and his wife Jacqueline arrived in Dallas to continue his campaign. The crowd greeted them warmly with flowers, laughter, and applause. Everything seemed full of promise. The Kennedys rode in an open convertible. Jacqueline, wearing a pink suit, stood out in every shot. The motorcade moved slowly through the city with crowds lining the streets, waving and cheering. Children shouted excitedly. The mood was warm and joyful. The motorcade followed the planned route through downtown Dallas, where the president was scheduled to give a speech. But when the cars turned into Dealey Plaza, everything changed. In just a few seconds, the world remembered the sound of gunshots. Chaos broke out. People screamed and rolled directions. Police rushed toward where the shots came from. At the same time, the presidential car sped away toward the nearest hospital, Parkland Memorial, just minutes from the shooting scene. Despite rapid treatment, President Kennedy did not survive. Outside the hospital, crowds of citizens and police gathered. People were shocked and emotional. Others stood in disbelief. The scene was chaotic and heavy with grief. Police quickly launched an investigation. Just 80 minutes after the assassination, the suspect, Lee Harvey Oswald, was arrested. He showed no expression and almost no remorse. Early the next morning, before dawn, Kennedy's body was taken back to the White House. The 35th President of the United States served only 2 years and 10 months before his term ended in gunfire. His death left the nation in long meanness, lasting sorrow and uncertainty.
But as I was listening to the Lord in shock, the Lord says that the government will do this because they think that publishing the papers on how President Kennedy was killed will bring healing to America, because they know that an entire generation, 2 generations actually, the older people and the young, even the little children that saw JF Kennedy Jr. stand and salute his father's coffin, they all grieved.
Sir, we have an executive order ordering the declassification of files relating to the assassinations of President John F. Kennedy, Senator Robert F. Kennedy, and Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.
That's a big one, huh? A lot of people are waiting for this for years, for decades. And everything will be revealed. Okay? Give that to RFK Jr.
Yes, sir.
I started to see papers. The Lord is speaking to me conversationally. I said that sometimes he will give me a thus saith the Lord. Many times the Lord will simply speak to me in a casual manner, and I'm writing down as he's speaking, and I'm seeing pictures. So redacted papers of all kinds are going to be exposed for public consumption, and a lot of secret knowledge will come out for everyone to know about. And as he's talking, I had a vision of many papers that were being typed over backward. It was very strange. In the old days, you use a typewriter, and the typewriter is hitting the keys going this way, but I saw the keys going that way. I guess God was showing it in reverse, and black squares that were covering all the words were going backwards and coming off of the documents. And I saw many documents sort of thrown across the table and also passing in movie fashion in front of me. And some of the documents only had like a few squares, so there were like a few names blacked out and maybe dates. But then some of the documents looked like this. I hope you can see that. So they looked like that, and basically the entire thing was scribble, 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 and only a few lines visible. And I remember seeing that and thinking, but why would anyone even release a document like this in the first place? Because you can't see anything on it and everything is hidden. But the Lord said that truth is coming, and many of the government experts who will recommend that these papers be released will make the recommendation saying, let's be transparent in an attempt to win the trust of the people. Let's do it so that they can trust us more. But God says that the public will have a lot of backlash and vitriol. Vitriol is extreme rage that splashes like acid, as someone expresses themselves. So the Lord says, redacted information revealed huge public data dumps, one after another. Long kept secrets, pacts made, agreements entered into, and hidden undertakings to do evil exposed.
We have another massive document dump from the U.S. government, this time in connection with the assassination of former President John F. Kennedy. Yep, those files have been released. They are dated both before and after Kennedy's assassination. And they don't just contain information about the shooting itself. They include materials about major incidents that were happening on a global scale around the same time. So we're talking about Vietnam, communism in Cuba, we have JFK's presidency, the international reaction to not only JFK's death, but also the assassination of Martin Luther King Jr., even plans on how to reorganize the CIA's infrastructure. There's a lot here.
To my knowledge, what I've seen so far are documents that were sometimes lightly, sometimes very heavily redacted, and now they're not. Occasionally, I've seen one or two documents that might still be slightly redacted. It was blocked out that the CIA carried out signals intelligence gathering with regard to Cuba. Well, of course we did. We have a thing called NSA, National Security Agency. That's what they do.
And it reveals Cuban leader Fidel Castro's surprising reaction to the assassination of JFK. The leader of Cuba's relationship with the United States had been fraught with tension since the Bay of Pigs and the Cuban Missile Crisis. And according to the document, Castro was, quote, very upset by the change in the U.S. administration brought about by Kennedy's death. Quote, Fidel Castro was very upset over the change in the United States administration brought about by President Kennedy's assassination. The top Cuban leadership was sure President Kennedy would not invade Cuba, and they were convinced that the policy of his administration for economic blockade and internal subversion against Cuba would not overthrow the regime. The present policy of the Cuban government, on orders from Castro, is not to attack President Johnson in public or do anything to irritate him. According to Cuban government leaders, Castro wants to wait and see what President Johnson says and does about Cuba and give him an opportunity to improve, if he feels so inclined, relations between the two countries.
So I think there was a certain regard that Castro had for Kennedy, although, look, he knew Kennedy was trying to overthrow him, and he believed correctly, that frankly the U.S. government had tried to kill him. I think he could not know, and we're not still entirely sure, if Kennedy knew details of these plots to kill Castro, or if he authorized them. I mean, that's something I would love to find in this release, is actually some kind of, smoking gun evidence that Kennedy knew of and authorized plots to kill Castro. I'm not optimistic about finding it, because that fits in the category, I would say, of things not put down on paper.
A few documents related to Robert F. Kennedy and to Martin Luther King Jr. were also released, including some related to their assassinations.
Thought at first it was a motorcycle backfire from one of the many motorcycles alongside of us in the motorcade. Bob Pierpoint jumped out of his seat and said, "That's gunfire."
Something has happened in the motorcade route. Something, I repeat, has happened in the motorcade route.
The further release of declassified assassination files in 2022 shed further light on the events surrounding the assassination of Kennedy in 1963.
We've got different perspectives, but I don't think we've necessarily had anything that's fundamentally challenged our view of what happened on the day.
What's crystal clear, despite the fact that over 4,000 files are still being held classified, the overwhelming fact is that both the CIA and the FBI were fully aware of Oswald's movement prior to 22nd of November.
People have given me a hearing without legal representation or anything. I didn't shoot anybody, no, sir.
And God says that the government is thinking that if they bring forth the truth and they give disclosure on how this happened, the nation will heal, but it will have the opposite effect, actually. The Lord said that Americans will be greatly enraged, and they will even be in disbelief that their government does this kind of thing and has been doing it way back then. This would be the 1960s.
The highly anticipated document drop did not reveal any bombshells, but there are some new details about the CIA and how it operated around the time of Kennedy's death.
This is a pretty big deal for many who harbored the notion that there was a greater conspiracy at work. Now they'll be able to see exactly what the government had.
One of the files, known as the Schlesinger Memo, revealed that some of President Kennedy's closest associates did not trust the CIA and were skeptical of its motives. Another file pulled back the curtain on some CIA operations. The organization was tapping Soviet and Cuban telephones at their diplomatic facilities in Mexico City, locations Lee Harvey Oswald visited in the months before the assassination. This latest JFK document drop, a promise from President Trump, who signed an executive order to have the records released without redactions.
And everything will be revealed.
While the initial investigation of the assassination determined 24-year-old Lee Harvey Oswald acted alone in killing Kennedy, and subsequent investigations confirmed that, all that hasn't stopped decades of conspiracy theories.
Why was Kennedy killed? Who benefited? Who has the power to cover it up?
Then he said the CIA, the FBI, and other long-existing government agencies were formed with very wide-reaching powers. Their powers do not fit the Constitution. I'm reading here exactly what he said. Their powers break the law. Their powers were not subject to public oversight. Their powers were never examined by public watchdog agencies. Their powers were never submitted for examinations or for voting on by responsible government bureaus. And God said that these long-time overly powerful agencies will begin to confess projects that they were working on as far back as 1950 and 1960, conducting projects without public knowledge, oversight, or consent.
The top 12 JFK files we need to see. Number 2, the Arthur Schlesinger Memo. Arthur Schlesinger was a special assistant to President John F. Kennedy, and he wrote a 15-page memo, which is about half redacted, in which he outlines why exactly JFK should mistrust the CIA and their covert operations. This file is in the National Archives with these redactions, but we need to see what's behind the covered-up space. And this will have a lot to do with how the CIA held on to these documents for so many years because they were, quite frankly, embarrassed about their covert operations and some of the methods that they used.
In the chaotic aftermath of President JFK's assassination, you have a man named Gary Underhill. This is so fascinating. So he apparently was a former CIA employee who made a startling claim. According to a memo from July 19th, 1967, quote, "The day after the assassination, Gary Underhill left Washington in a hurry. Late in the evening, he showed up at the home of friends in New Jersey. He was very agitated. A small clique within the CIA was responsible for the assassination, he confided, and he was afraid for his life and probably would have to leave the country." Less than 6 months later, Underhill was found shot to death in his Washington apartment. The coroner ruled it a suicide. The friends whom Underhill visited said he was sober but badly shook. They say he attributed the Kennedy murder to a CIA clique which was carrying on a lucrative racket in gun running, narcotics, and other contraband, and manipulating political intrigue to serve its own ends. Kennedy supposedly got wind that something was going on and was killed before he could blow the whistle on it. The verdict of suicide in Underhill's death is by no means convincing. His body was found by a writing collaborator, Asher Burns of the New Republic. He had been shot behind the left ear and an automatic pistol was under his left side. Odd, says Burns, because Underhill was right-handed. Burns thinks the pistol was fitted with a silencer, and occupants of the apartment building could not recall hearing a shot. Underhill obviously had been dead several days.
Suicide? Let's see. Underhill had been an intelligence agent during World War II and was recognized authority on limited warfare and small arms. A researcher and writer on military affairs, he was on a first-name basis with many of the top brass in the Pentagon. He was also on intimate terms with a number of high-ranking CIA officials. He was one of the agency's unpeople who performed special assignments. Like suiciding people behind the left ear? People, at one time he had been a friend of Samuel Cummings of Interarmco, the arms broker that numbers among its customers the CIA, and ironically, Klein Sporting Goods of Chicago, from whence the mail-order Carcano allegedly was purchased by Oswald. Here we go.
We got this one document where a KGB official concluded, quote, Oswald was at no time an agent controlled by the KGB. From the description of Oswald in the files, he doubted that anyone could control Oswald, but noted that the KGB watched him closely and constantly while he was in the USSR. The file also reflected that Oswald was a poor shot when he tried target firing in the USSR, which was a little bit of an interesting detail.
George D. Mohrenschildt was a Russian-born geologist and a close friend of Lee Harvey Oswald, the assassin of President John F. Kennedy. Mohrenschildt also had connections to George H.W. Bush.
He became somewhat alarmed by his extremist views and by the fact of his having the Nazi citizenship. And that's why, at the time, I asked a fellow connected either with FBI or CIA, I do not remember, what did you think of Harvey Lee Oswald? A harmless lunatic, he said. And after the assassination, he appeared to us as a patsy, because he was a harmless lunatic. If he actually did it, he would have been probably proud of it, because it was an important act, the most important act in the century. But he denied it till the last moment, and the last words he uttered were, I am a patsy.
Maybe you will be able to bring a solution into the hopeless situation I find myself in. My wife and I find ourselves surrounded by some vigilantes, our phone bugged, and we are being followed everywhere. Either FBI is involved in this or they do not want to accept my complaints. We are driven to insanity by this situation, tried to write, stupidly and unsuccessfully, about Lee H. Oswald and must have angered a lot of people. Could you do something to remove this net around us? This will be my last request for help and I will not annoy you anymore. George H.W. Bush wrote a memo to the CIA acknowledging he knew de Mohrenschildt. 6 months later, de Mohrenschildt apparently took his own life with a shotgun.
God says that the American people will be extremely angry over the revelations concerning this particular death, and he gave me 2 names in association with this killing: Lyndon Johnson and George Bush Sr. Please bear in mind that I live in Brooklyn and I don't know these people.
Did Lyndon Johnson have JFK killed?
Lyndon should have never issued that order tonight.
Was Malcolm Mack Wallace, a convicted murderer with rumored ties to LBJ, ordered to take out the president? Some researchers have even suggested that fingerprint analysis from the Texas school book depository places Wallace at the crime scene.
He hired Mike Wallace to assassinate the president. We've had our differences, and I'm true blue to Lyndon, as I've always been, to try to carry out every order that he'd ever given me. But this is one I'll probably never be able to forget.
This is said to be the voice of Clifton Carter, a key political operative for LBJ. Was Clifton's relationship with LBJ strained by the supposed order to take out President Kennedy? Several years later, Wallace died in a suspicious single-car accident, which many say looked like an orchestrated cover-up. Did Lyndon Johnson get away with the most consequential hit in American history?
It's sure good to see how life treats you today. Well, Saul, it's been a pretty touch-and-go situation. Lyndon and I have had quite a few unpleasant words here lately over the deal with that
This is Mac Wallace's fingerprint. It was found on a carton on the 6th floor of the Texas School Book Depository. It was a 14-point match. Mac Wallace was actually indicted, arrested, convicted for an actual murder, but also suspected of several others. We know that he had an affair with JFK's sister, and that was one of the ones that he was convicted on. You can read all about that. But he was basically known as LBJ's hitman. Again, a 14-point match, pretty conclusive. So yes, I agree with Mac Wallace, and I definitely agree with Alan Dulles, and possibly Woody Harrelson's dad, Frank Sturgis. E. Howard Hunt were also all involved.
November 22nd, 1963 in Dallas, Texas. Everybody knows what happened that day. President was assassinated. A nation was traumatized, completely in shock. And you may not know that in a quiet FBI office, a memo was written, and it stated, Mr. George Bush of the Central Intelligence Agency was briefed about the reaction of anti-Castro Cubans to the assassination. But, my friends, years later, Bush claimed he wasn't anywhere near Dallas. In fact, he actually had the audacity to claim that he didn't remember where he was for many, many years. And denied ever being in the CIA at that time, despite what we now have, official records saying otherwise. Makes you beg the question, why the denial?
John F. Kennedy was assassinated by CIA under Alan Dulles' instructions with the joyous cooperation of pedophile J. Edgar Hoover, founder of the FBI, and the approval of Lyndon Baines Johnson, the most crooked politician in history up until Hillary Clinton, with the active participation of the Bush family. George W. Bush Sr. was part of the deal, and Howard Hunt was part of the deal.
The Kennedy connection. God was showing me John F. Kennedy, and what God was showing me specifically was the moment that John F. Kennedy got shot. I was seeing it in dreams. All I remember from the dream is seeing JFK's motorcade happening like a small movie, almost like a watermark on my dream. So in my dream, it was me and whatever it is that was happening that sadly I cannot remember now. But just the way when you make a short film or anything and you don't have money to get the big studios to take your movie or anything like that, you're going to put a little watermark on it so that if anybody tries to steal it or download it, your little mark, your little maybe studio logo or whatever will be on your movie. And some people even put a watermark over the whole of their movie so that as the movie is playing stuff on YouTube, you can see the watermark over the whole of the picture to make it useless for somebody else to steal it and claim that it's theirs. Well, I'm having a dream, and at the bottom, I keep seeing JFK's motorcade speed past at the moment that they've shot him either once or twice. So it literally is just the car speeds past and he's already slumped like this because they've already shot him at least once or twice. And then the car just will speed past, and then the car will appear again and speed past, and then appear again and speed past. And I remember seeing that. That was one of the dreams. So I dreamt I was part of a group of investors, but I couldn't see us. I just knew that we were investors because I knew that everybody else was sharply dressed in a black suit. Everybody in the room was sharply dressed in a black suit, and we had been invited to this company, some kind of design company, architectural company, obviously. We had been invited to come and get a first look at a mock-up of a building or something like that somebody wanted us to fund. So it was me and several other people, and we come in through these glass doors, and then we come in to the place where the main presentation is, and this person has taken so much time because whatever it is that they've designed, whether it's a block of office towers, whether it's apartment buildings, I couldn't really tell. This person had put so much time and effort into a live scale model. And the central thing I remember was a very tall building, so distinctive. I don't know if I've seen this building before in real life or not, but this building has notches in the side of it, exactly like a Jenga tower. So you know the way Jenga tiles would sit like that, the way they would stick out, and the way it would be like one tile sticking out and then a notch where the building seems to go in and then down and then seems to go in and then down like that. I remember that the side of this building has this distinct notched appearance, and it is not a building made of light tiles or glass. The building appears dark gray or black. That's how it looked. And the building was so impressive, and it was the central part of something else. And the way that this person had done it, the mock-up itself looked very expensive, and it was quite expansive. And they had taken the time to come up with everything that they believed they could show us this investing in these apartments, or maybe it was office towers. I can't tell. They had come up with everything that they wanted to convince us would spring up around these office towers or these apartments as a result of building that kind of development. They had come up with schools in the area. They had come up with a sports center in the area. They had come up with so many fast food places, so many upmarket restaurants. They had come up with a spa. They had come up with mid-level hotels, to even one nice high-rise hotel that they said that it would definitely draw more people to the area. They wanted us to build this building. But then I see, so strange, I see a black car, convertible, a Lincoln, the old style Lincoln. John F. Kennedy was shot in a 1961 Lincoln Continental convertible. It was specially made for him, I think, as the president. And I think it bears mentioning here that ever since he was shot, I don't know of another American president that has ever ridden open top since he was shot. Every president starts to ride in a highly fortified car. And so I see on this car that has this board that has no cars, lots of people, moms holding kids and pushing a pram, to show this will be a family-oriented place. Even if it's an office tower, many people will come and stay in the apartments that we can build around this one distinctive gray building with the notches. I see in a parking lot a Lincoln, and in the Lincoln I see two dolls. Now the whole thing is just a plastic scale, and it's bigger than Hot Wheels. This car is about it's maybe 10 times bigger than a standard Hot Wheel car. Like, it's a proper scale model sitting in one of the parking spaces in front of the gray building. And for some reason, nobody seems to see this car but me. And I don't want to peer too closely at the car. And so I come and I pretend to be looking at everything else, but I'm eyeing the car. And in the car, I can see only two dolls, and they're both sitting in the back seat. Nobody seems to have noticed the car on the table. And it was an exact copy of an old style Lincoln Continental convertible. And in it were two dolls. One doll was a male in a black suit. And that doll was slumped back on his portion of the seat. So he was slumped backward on his portion of the seat. And then there was another doll, a female doll, and she was reaching both hands towards him with a very distressed look on her face. And I don't remember anything about that doll except that she had a boxy hat on her head. So I don't remember really exactly what the doll was wearing, but I remember she had a boxy hat on her head and she was reaching out to him with so much distress. And there was a small pink stain on the cushion of the seat behind the head of the male doll. And I found this so curious, because we know that the president's, the final shot, if you don't know, if you're watching from a foreign country, obviously you may not know the innate details of this, and nobody can blame you for that. But the president's final shot was directly to the head, and his head did not come through that kind of blunt impact very well. It was documented that until they got to the place where he was supposed to get life-saving care, his wife was basically holding his head together. She was trying to hold his head and his brains and everything like that together. And so there was the person who had made the doll, made the car, included a pink stain, a raised pink stain on the headrest behind the doll, and then the doll was laid directly on that stain. His head was laying directly on that stain, and then the other doll was reaching out to him with horror and stress, reaching out to him with this boxy hat on her head. And at the back, in real life, President John F. Kennedy's car, I think it had a flag. So I think it had like a flagpole at the back with the U.S. flag. But in every dream that I was having, including the first one, I kept seeing a red flag. It was not the American flag. I kept seeing a red flag, and it always had writing on it. So in the first dream, obviously, because it was a tiny watermark with the car just repeating. It was just like a bit of film, just a clip of film repeating, the car driving by with a little flag fluttering. It was just a little red thing. Obviously, I couldn't read it. But this one in the parking lot, I could see what was written on it, and it had SC2175. SC2175. And I remember thinking, that's not an American flag. I wonder what that means. And so that was the first dream, right? We come to Sunday, and on Sunday, I dreamt of President John F. Kennedy's motorcade 6 times. I had the same dream 6 times, and with very little changes, except I would think the only changes were that my vantage point was changing. And so the first time I dreamt it, the motorcade was coming down the street, and the excitement in the crowd was palpable. We were at a point where the president was going to pass right in front of us, and I was about 3 people deep. So about a first line of people, second line of people, 3 line of people. But then the way we were standing, it was like we were standing towards a slight graded hill. And so I was not struggling to see at all. It's not like the people in front of me, like we were all standing flat and then I had to see through their heads. No, I had a good view. It was almost like stadium graded seating. And so I was in about the 3rd row in the depth of the crowd. And with my unblocked view, I was clearly able to see the car as it came down the street. However, all of us were real in the crowd on both sides of the street, clapping, waving flags, so excited. Yet, when the car came, everybody in the car was a doll. Okay? They looked like dolls. They didn't look like real people. Nobody was moving. And when the cars came, they sped by so fast as if they had been put on a model train track set. A model train track set is just basically a set for kids. You set it up, you build all the tracks, and then you put the train on it, and then you can increase the speed of the train so that it goes by really slowly, which is best if you have little children. It's not best to set the speed so that it goes fast if your children are very small. But the older children like to set it at a good whizzing speed because that's just more interesting for them. These cars went by as if they were on a toy set track, but they went around the bend so fast, like phew, they went by so quick. So all I could see is that there were 2 dolls in the back. I didn't get to see or notice if there were dolls sitting in the front, but obviously a car has to have a driver. And then they whooshed by, but I noticed that the back of the president's car had a flag flying there, and the flag was not the US flag. The flag was red. The flag's tail looked exactly like this, just like the ends of my jacket. Just as you can see, the little nick, that's how the flag looked like. It had a cutout in the tail, and that flag said SC2175, the same as the flag that I saw when I was having the dream about being at an investment development meeting. And then all of a sudden, the cars, the motorcade, everything was gone, just like that. And I woke up and I fell right back to sleep, and I dreamt seeing the cars again, over and over. A second dream and a third dream going by really fast, except that in the second and the third dream, I was in the 2nd row and then the 1st row. So I was getting closer and closer each time, seeing these cars whiz by. The crowd is cheering, but the cars go by too fast to even give us that satisfaction of, oh, we've seen the presidential motorcade of President John F. Kennedy. He goes by too fast, and people are disappointed, wondering why the cars are zipping by so fast like that. And then I have the 4th dream. And this time I'm not in the crowd. I have gone right down the slope and am standing almost by the road when the cars are coming by. And the cars come back around. They come by so fast. And this time it seems as if President John F. Kennedy is sleeping. This time he is not a doll. He's a real man. And his wife is a real woman. Or, yes, okay. I'll just continue. The president is sleeping. He's a real person. His wife is a real person, and he appears to be sleeping, and his head is completely lolled back. And again, the wife is reaching for him like that. And from what I can see, the quick glimpse I got, the president was not moving at all when the cars came round the bend. And so his wife has a horrible expression on her face. And this time the cars are racing, and there's this loud siren blasting as well that makes it very hard for me to think. And I see the flag rustling at the back of the car again, and it's not the American flag. It's a red flag with a nick in its tail, and this time the writing on it, this is my 4th dream, and the writing says SC2173. I managed to see that, but nothing else, not much else, because everything is moving too quickly, and I didn't see anything for a brief moment except that this person is no longer upright or waving when the car comes around the bend. I saw how the driver accelerates the car and they move away so fast from us. And the last thing that I get in this dream is seeing that long flag, almost like a pennant, going by SC2173. So my dream is like that. This is my fourth dream. I have another dream exactly that is just like it. And then my last dream, when the car came around the bend, it seemed like somebody had sped up the whole dream so much that everything is just a blur. The cars come pelting around the curve of the road. And by now I am standing directly by the side of the road. I'm standing by the side of the road. And this time the woman is hugging the man to her chest. The woman is hugging the man to her chest and she's shouting something at somebody, but I don't know who. And the people around me are still clapping and cheering and waving their flags.
And he starts playing this tape. It was the Zapruder tape of the Kennedy assassination, but then he slowed it way down. And it was so slow that you could almost see the air moving. Then you saw the driver take a gun and go like this and shoot Kennedy, and the bullet comes out of the gun this slow, very, very, very slow. I'm thinking, this isn't the tape I ever saw before. So I said, is this a doctored tape? What's this about? And he said, this is the original one. And I said, no, you know. And he said, well, I'm going to show you the one that you've seen on the media. Now the next tape is your typical one where the driver just keeps driving, never even flinches with the gun. And he stops the tape. And he says, look at the tree. And there's the top of a tree growing in air. And he says, this is the one that you're seeing on the media. And it's been doctored. He looked very, very intently at me and he said, nothing is as it appears to be.
AI analysis. It is highly likely that the photo has been digitally altered, or at the very least, heavily processed and or affected by image degradation, to produce those specific two-toned colors.
There's a big difference between seeing a picture on the internet that someone has posted and actually getting a real-life print enlargement of it. So that's what I did. This is one of my favorite pictures from the assassination, and you've all seen it many times before. This is like one of the most well-known pictures. And the first thing that I would point out is the driver over here, whose jacket appears to be buttoned. So, you know, pretty tough to be like digging in here in his right-handed shoulder holster and using his left hand to do so. And then, you know, the idea, of course, that he turned around and shot President Kennedy in the right side of the head. That's just straight up ridiculous. The other thing that I always like to point out in this picture is the reflection right here of Clint Hill's face. That's Clint Hill right there. That's his reflection from actually a half a car length away. Of course, the motorcycle rider, police officer right here is also reflected there. And these are the handles that the Secret Service men were supposed to be using standing on the back of the limo.
I can now basically tell you what God was saying to me, and God was basically telling me, Celestia, there's going to be an assassination in the United States. There's going to be a political assassination in the United States. The assassination of a political figure that will follow the order of former President JFK. This assassination is a sacrifice determined by others as necessary to achieve their end goals and objectives. They have reached a final determination on it, and their plans are, when it happens, we will contain it like water flowing from a drainage pipe that burst, that simply has to be managed. That's what they're calling it. That's how they think of it. It will be something that has to happen, and when it happens, it will be managed like a household accident. That's how the foremost actors of the plan think. That it will be like fallout water, like water flowing from a busted pipe that simply has to be managed, has to be caught, and that it has to be caught the best they can and contained before it ruins the floors. But Yah says, no, they are wrong. It will not be like a household pipe water. It will be like nuclear fallout water, and not just water. It will be like nuclear fallout itself. They are wrong about how things will go. They are wrong about the extent of how people will take it. He says that nobody can contain the reaction of America when shots ring out again, when foul play is suspected, when favorite sons are gone, when the scapegoat is sacrificed. Therefore, the Lord says that we should prepare ourselves for nuclear fallout water in America. Thus says the Lord. This same nuclear fallout water is extremely dangerous, contaminated, deadly, and carrying sure destruction with it. That is how, in the same way, this assassination coming to the United States will topple the nation into pandemonium and reduce a civil nation to a greatly uncivil state. Prepare for these times. These times are soon at hand. And so I'm dreaming of JFK. I'm seeing JFK's motorcade going by. And if you notice, many people, I know your expectation was that God would slow down the assassination and show Celestial who did it, because one group of people say that there was a shot ringing out from the grassy knoll, that the shooter was concealed on some high hill, and that he shot twice. And stunningly enough, they say the shooter, yes. No, I'm not going to bite my tongue. They say that the shooter shot from the back, and that the shot of the shooter came through the head of the victim and then entered and poured out through his neck. And I'm just wondering, where have Americans seen that recently? Somebody claimed to have been shot from a very high vantage point. We can't call it the grassy knoll, so let's call it the high building across the street. Somebody claims to have been shot definitively from the rear. It is insisted. The person suffered a shot from the back. It supposedly entered the back of his head, came out through his neck, exactly the way that they say John F. Kennedy was shot, except that in every single tape of the president that exists, he is seen recoiling into his seat. Not exactly forward. He's falling backward. The way that God is showing me, he's falling backward. Now, God didn't come here to solve conspiracy theories of did he really get shot from a high vantage point from the rear, or is it much more likely that the very old people who have slowed down the tape are saying that his own driver shot him at point blank range, and that is why the first time that he shot, his wife moves towards him as any concerned person would, but then when he shot again, the woman is seen actually completely ditching him and trying to climb out of the car. Like she literally climbs off the back seat and she begins climbing the back of the Lincoln as if she has no regard for her own life. Because where are you going when a car is accelerating in the forward direction and you're crawling away out of the car? No more arms extended to hold him and say, no, she's trying to climb out of the car. So that is not what I'm here to solve, because I have been here telling America for a long time that your entire life is a lie. And that's very hard for a lot of people to grasp. It's very hard for a lot of people to grasp because when someone tells you that your entire life is a lie, obviously you feel affronted, you feel attacked. And the reason you feel that way is because there's an odd habit in humans. When you tell them the truth, instead of listening to the truth that is coming from the outside, they tend to always listen with an inverted filter and make everything about them.
In 1996, Maria Farmer told the FBI that Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell had sexually assaulted her and had also abused her teenage sister. The FBI failed to investigate. For 30 years, survivors have come forward to accuse Epstein of running a sex trafficking ring. They reported to police, testified in court, filed lawsuits. In return, the system exposed them, their names often making headlines. Meanwhile, the many people accused of conspiring with Epstein have remained hidden in the shadows. Here's how the Epstein files exposed the victims, but protected the powerful. In November 2025, the U.S. Congress passed the Epstein Files Transparency Act. The law was clear. Release the files, protect the victims, expose the enablers, but don't compromise any ongoing investigations or identify the victims. The Justice Department began releasing documents in December. The largest release came on January 30th. More than 3 million pages, tens of thousands of images and videos. Within hours, survivors started calling their lawyers. One email listed the names of 32 minors who were victims. Only one name was blacked out. A review by the Wall Street Journal found the full names of at least 43 victims in the files. More than 24 were minors when they were allegedly abused. Dozens of unredacted photos exposing young women's faces were posted to the Department of Justice website. One set of more than 100 images was blacked out except the very last picture, which revealed a woman's entire face. And then there were the many bank account numbers, social security numbers, dates of birth, phone numbers, and home addresses. Over 3,000 pages contained victim identifying information. After complaints, the DOJ took down 9,500 documents it had posted and flagged another 7,000 for review. The files named celebrities, billionaires, politicians, but the names of Epstein's alleged co-conspirators are redacted. A draft indictment from 2007 named 3 people who worked for Epstein as his personal assistants, allegedly helping him to recruit underage girls. Their names are blacked out following a plea deal. Emails in the files contain disturbing content, and the names of the people who wrote them are redacted. One reads, "Thank you for a fun night. Your littlest girl was a little naughty." Another said, "I loved the torture video." Both senders were kept anonymous. Who decides what gets redacted by the Trump administration's Justice Department is unclear.
He said, "You hid the information. You redacted it. But I, the Lord, now unredact it. I reveal the hidden things of this earth. Is there anything made that I, the Lord God, have not made? The earth, the sea, with all her terrible things beneath, I, the Lord, have made them. I see everything, and I know everything. I am all in all. I am opening the books. I am settling all accounts. No debt shall remain unpaid. I say again, no debt, whether good or evil, shall go unrewarded. No wickedness will be unrequited, and no good deed will be unblessed. I, the Lord, am the sword of justice. I come to balance the books. Secret keepers, reveal your secrets. I command it from heaven. You on the earth, watch, and it shall be so."
We are getting some breaking news. We're hearing that President Trump has signed the bill that Congress passed, calling for the release of the federal government to release more Epstein files. The president just putting this lengthy statement out. I'm going to read it. Jeffrey Epstein, who was charged by the Trump Justice Department in 2019, not the Democrats, was a lifelong Democrat, donated thousands of dollars to Democrat politicians, and was deeply associated with many well-known Democratic figures such as Bill Clinton, who traveled on his plane 26 times, Larry Summers, who just resigned from many boards, including Harvard, sleazebag political activist Reid Hoffman, Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries, who asked Epstein to donate to his campaign after Epstein was charged, Democrat Congresswoman Stacey Plaskett, and many more. Perhaps the truth about these Democrats and their associations with Jeffrey Epstein will soon be revealed, because I have just signed the bill to release the Epstein files. As everyone knows, I asked Speaker of the House Mike Johnson and Senate Majority Leader John Thune to pass this bill in the House and Senate respectively. Because of this request, the votes were almost unanimous in favor of passage. At my direction, the Department of Justice has already turned over close to 50,000 pages of documents to Congress. Do not forget, the Biden administration did not turn over a single file or page related to Democrat Epstein.
The US Justice Department has until later today to release most files from investigations into the late sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. It follows a separate release on Thursday of yet more photographs from the Epstein estate by Democrats on a congressional committee.
Millions of pages of U.S. Justice Department and court records linked to convicted pedophile Jeffrey Epstein were released on January 30th. The files include emails, audio recordings, contacts, financial records, and tens of thousands of images and videos. So far, most attention has focused on the famous names mentioned, but the documents tell a bigger story. They show Epstein was not just a criminal hiding in plain sight. He was a connector, a middleman, someone who built a powerful network that linked politics, academia, business, and technology for decades. This is part one of that story. This is Epstein's power network. From the 1990s onwards, Epstein positioned himself as someone who could open doors. Court filings and emails show he arranged introductions, private meetings, and discreet gatherings between influential figures. He used private jets, luxury homes, and invitation-only dinners to create controlled spaces where powerful people met away from scrutiny. He wasn't just socializing, he was trading access. Epstein donated money to elite universities and research programs, buying proximity to senior academics and institutional leadership. That access translated into legitimacy. People approached him for funding, introductions, and advice on political or reputational problems. This combination of money, connections, and discretion became the backbone of his network. At the center of his operations was former British socialite and now convicted child sex trafficker Ghislaine Maxwell. Prosecutors identified Maxwell as Epstein's primary facilitator. Victims testified that she recruited vulnerable teenage girls, transported them to Epstein's homes, and helped groom them for sexual abuse. Several victims said Epstein and Maxwell placed hidden cameras in bedrooms and bathrooms to gain compromising material to use for nefarious purposes. Thousands of images were seized during raids by authorities.
Just this morning, House Democrats released more emails showing that Trump knew more about Epstein's abuses than he previously acknowledged. It's past time for Congress to restore its role as a check and balance on this administration and fight for we, the American people.
I'm speaking to you, America, and I have to ask you this. You're fighting right now for Epstein files. The files have to come out. The files have to come out. Why is it that you're not aware that you don't have the stomach for what exactly is in those files? Do you actually think that the files that that man possessed are coming out to say, oh no, we'll meet together and we'll get a little 17-year-old? Is that what you think is in those files? Those files that probably contain popes doing things with dogs. Why is it that you want to carry on about things that you don't have the stomach for? Things that once you see them, your face will get like my face here. My face has changed in the 6 years that I've been here. My gaze has changed. My nature has changed because I said there's no way that God can put you inside a swamp of a toilet that calls itself a country and then put you what you thought was the ground floor and tell you, dig up all the caked feces in here. And then as you dig, you got to a place where all of a sudden the floor dropped and then you found out that there was deeper basements. That's what I've been finding out for the entire time I've been here. I'm still finding it out as my last video evidences. I'm still finding out how deep the toilet can go, what this country is capable of, this ever morphing this monster. And then you will carry on campaigning, release the files, and the files come out and you see a 4-year-old being mounted by a dog. Then we'll come back here. Oh, Celestial, it's diabolical. I'm forever changed. Yes. Because what did I say to you in the early years? I said that God said we will all be ruined by this country. Everyone will have the 1,000-yard stare before this thing is out. You want to knock on doors that have things behind them that you can't tolerate because you think these people ruling you, the worst they can do. You will see them abuse someone. The person will die on camera, right? Live snuff film, because Mr. Epstein he had and has an impeccable library. He has an enviable library. You will see a dog on a person and then people pile up on one person. You will see the person die on camera. As I told you back in 2020, 2021, that snuff films are made here and that they're in demand all over the world. Now, when we're talking about Obama, what do you think it is that Mr. Rahm Emanuel knows? Pile up on a person, the person will pass away on camera, and then there will still be a line of about 10 more people on that dead body. Are you ready? Are you ready? Or is it just, you're just talking? Because when I just used to prophesy the thing, I was called vulgar, sex crazed, and all kinds of things that I hope God will bury into the heart in vengeance of the people who said it. May he do it. May they eat the fruit of their words, the things that they would say to a person sanctified and set aside as myself.
Politicians on both sides were found to be raping, torturing, and executing children in sacrificial manner. dismembering kids, removing their intestines, filling them with feces, and then consuming them. I'm not kidding. This is this is beyond evil. Constant ritual sacrifice, constant breeding parties, constant torture and rape until the victim died, including Prince Andrew, Bush, Trump, Hillary. All these people are involved. This is off the cuff. I'm not going to edit this. You guys need to know. Harvesting of Mormon blood as some sort of weekly payment system for select breeders. Creation of transhuman sex slaves by biologically turning men into women and women into men through hormonal and biological intervention, using different formulas across the gender spectrum in order to cater to different tastes and sexual appetites. The apparent war between currently winning. The identity of codename Mr. Evil, who is allegedly Epstein meeting with details about the debaucherous sex parties, including individuals having their backs and legs cut open and then performing sex while others eat intestines and cannibalize children. At these events, the names dropped were George Soros, H.W. Bush, and Henry Kissinger. The dressing up of young children into different Disney characters and then being sold to specific clients. William Barr, ex-attorney U.S. General, apparently frequenting these sex parties where Epstein would abduct and then sexually abuse victims. The disclosure that quantum computing technology is 3 billion times better than their Illuminati magic, in a very heated email exchange between two individuals. An odd email chain where Mary Kennedy was found dead in her backyard, where Epstein replied, "Whoops." A person named Pizza Monster, with frequent references to how much he loved the taste of pizza and just craved pizza. This figure is currently unidentified. Trafficking of young homeless people, turning them into extreme sexual deviants through consistent ritualistic and sexual abuse, and later pawning them off, putting them into certain positions of influence, power, or work is heavily implied. Jeffrey Epstein's connection to the Rothschilds being paid to the tune of $25 million. And last but not least, Robert Maxwell, Ghislaine Maxwell's father, apparently turning on Mossad, demanding hundreds of millions of dollars because he has so much control over the United States, naming himself Israel's unofficial ambassador to the Soviet bloc. And then, as a surprise to nobody, he was found dead. Honorable mentions are possible time travel, transhumanism experiments, and the bloodline of the literal Illuminati being listed out. Woody Allen and Jeffrey Epstein watching an abortion happen. Jeffrey's comments about there being millions of babies and that they taste like cream cheese. Bill and Jeff talking about before 2020. Parents Thomas's alleged raping of a child. A conversation talking about how Donald Trump should be assassinated within a few weeks. Health coach Peter Attia talking to Jeffrey Epstein about how eating pea is low carb. The Wayfire connection of selling overpriced furniture actually in exchange for human trafficking. The manipulation of Wikipedia being used to hide Jeffrey Epstein's sex scandals. Any definitive evidence that pizza, hot dogs, ice cream, and bagels are alluded to actually mean something in relation to human trafficking. I'll let you do the math. The Sultan wanting a robo-dick, them calling him a stupid. Jeffrey's influence over Gollum AI. Multiple emails sharing concern about the rise of conservative values, pushing to promote more liberal values in transgender surgeries on young kids, but surgeries that they themselves would not use on their own. Conversations about Jesus with his victims, specifically him mocking Christ and then implying that he should dress up as Jesus next time he visits her. Jeffrey Epstein's connection to Emmanuel Macron. Jeffrey Epstein's illicit involvement in the founding of Bitcoin and how much influence it has. And last but not least, the consistent references to the Roosevelt family, the Rothschilds family, and the Bush family coming up multiple times throughout the emails, showing the vast expanse and powerful network that he actually did have. Piers Morgan being mentioned in the files numerous times. Situation with Prince Andrew being brought up, saying that, quote unquote, the Brits won't let this go, recommending Piers Morgan to interview him to help clean the slate, I guess, to shifting the public narrative in order to alleviate pressure for the crimes they've committed. It has massive implications because as long as it's suspected that they shift the narrative in order to make you forget about serious crimes, this is just them literally admitting to it.
And it looks like he's mostly just a fixer, a guy who advises. He helps people with their problems. Sometimes those problems are, you need a girl and
or some penicillin,
or some, if you need it, he's got it.
He's a rabbi.
A limo driver's testimony claiming that Epstein and Trump raped, and then killed a girl. However, this is all allegedly. This is the only account I could find of it. A reference to something called Color of the Day, where agents will dress in the same color when running an operation to identify each other. Be seen multiple times throughout the files. It is entirely unredacted except for one situation on the day of September 10th, the same day that Charlie was killed. It is the only one where the color of the day is redacted. A coded diary written from one of the victims of Epstein's point of view, her having kids, and then Epstein and Ghislaine taking the kid away from her. It's extremely sad and graphic. Implications of these files are insane. Implicating that our administration, a lot of our government is just compromised. Implicating that we have an elite class of people that will lie, kill, rape, and cannibalize children implies that our legacy media is literally nothing but completely useless and only works as a propaganda mouthpiece. It's implicating that they have no interest in actually protecting the victims. They're protecting the names of the powerful people. So it implicates that they do believe in these other deities. The biggest implication of all this is that our justice system will literally lock you up for a speeding ticket, but go and do backflips, lie under oath, on camera, on podcasts, to cover for people raping and eating kids. Is that getting through to anybody? So if they're going to arrest you for a parking ticket, but they're not going to arrest you for raping and eating and cannibalizing children, is that a justice system? Like, what do you even call that?
The files have unearthed details that paint a picture of Jeffrey Epstein's obsessive need for leverage and his strange intellectual preoccupations. Photos of a landline phone at Epstein's island residence showed first names written on the speed dial, hinting at the immediacy of his access to powerful people.
Still, the implication was clear. Epstein didn't just collect people, he collected leverage. Relationships with politicians gave Epstein protection and reach. Emails show him advising political figures and strategists, offering to arrange meetings with world leaders. He maintained contact with senior U.S. officials, like former U.S. Secretary of the Treasury Larry Summers, well after his 2008 conviction. Former Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Barak, who was photographed visiting Epstein's home and appears in flight logs, consulted with the sex offender on business ventures and investments, including defense and cyber startups. Epstein's calendars also show meetings with tech billionaire Peter Thiel, and repeated discussions about Palantir and surveillance technology were found in his communications.
However, he has a company called Palantir. So he thought that Peter would put you on the board of Palantir. He and Andreessen, it's called Andreessen Horowitz. They are the biggest venture capital people in Silicon Valley.
Virginia Giuffre, one of the first Epstein victims to speak out, accused a powerful political figure of rape in her memoir.
I was recruited at a very young age from Mar-a-Lago and entrapped in a world that I didn't understand, and I've been fighting that very world to this day, and I won't stop fighting.
While not named directly, court filings and travel records point to Barak, who was a regular presence in Epstein's world. Epstein's network extended into media and political strategy. Former Trump advisor Steve Bannon exchanged hundreds of messages with Epstein between 2018 and 2019. They discussed politics, travel, and even a documentary aimed at rehabilitating Epstein's image. Some messages were sent just months before Epstein's 2019 arrest. In the UK, Epstein's reach extended deep into the establishment. Senior Labour Party figure Peter Mandelson introduced Epstein to then Prime Minister Tony Blair. In 2025, British Prime Minister Keir Starmer removed Mandelson as UK ambassador to the US after messages revealed the scale of his relationship with Epstein. Mandelson is now under investigation for allegedly leaking sensitive information to the convicted criminal. Then there is Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, the now former prince. Epstein's files reference Andrew hundreds of times. In 2022, Giuffre accused him of sexually abusing her when she was 17. In response, Queen Elizabeth II stripped Andrew of his military roles. And in 2025, King Charles III removed his remaining royal titles. Andrew's former wife, Sarah Ferguson, also exchanged warm emails with Epstein, calling him a legend. Academia gave Epstein intellectual cover. He donated millions to Harvard University, funding research programs, and maintaining close contact with senior academics and having access to offices. Emails show ongoing engagement with senior faculty, including Professor Martin Nowak. He also donated repeatedly to Massachusetts Institute of Technology. including after his conviction. New files also reveal correspondence with Professor Noam Chomsky, for whom Epstein sought advice on handling media coverage of sex trafficking allegations. Business and tech kept Epstein relevant. He was well connected to global players and decision-makers even after his conviction. He invested millions in ventures linked to Thiel in 2014. After the Brexit vote, he exchanged emails with Thiel, framing the political instability as a market opportunity. He also exchanged multiple emails with the founder of Virgin Group, Richard Branson. In 2013, the billionaire invited Epstein to his privately owned Necker Island in the Caribbean, saying, "Anytime you're in the area, would love to see you, as long as you bring your harem." In the very same email, Branson suggested that Epstein should use Microsoft founder Bill Gates to publicly rehabilitate his image after being exposed by indictments in 2009 and victims' testimonies in the years that followed. Gates later acknowledged meeting Epstein multiple times and called it a mistake. 2 days before his death in a Manhattan jail cell, Epstein signed a will listing nearly $600 million in assets. He named Boris Nikolic as successor executor, despite having no direct business relationship with the biotech investor.
Photography company LifeTouch addresses rumors around Epstein ties. And here we are. My school just announced that Picture Day is canceled tomorrow. Apparently, there's been a huge wave of concerned parents claiming LifeTouch is mentioned in the Epstein files. The school says they're canceling and having lawyers review the contract. I'm not usually one for conspiracy theories, but the idea that someone like that could have access to school photos nationwide is honestly disturbing. It makes you think about how Epstein identified and targeted vulnerable kids, families, especially in rural or low-income communities. The whole situation feels like something out of a horror movie. Schools across the United States to cancel Picture Day due to Leon Black's Epstein file involvement. Pretty sad when local schools are more aware and doing more than our government. Honestly, so pathetic, and they should be ashamed of themselves.
We have some major news right now. The fallout from the Epstein files is getting started as multiple people have been fired. Multiple wealthy and powerful people have been fired or lost their jobs over being named in the Epstein files in connection with Jeffrey Epstein.
Goldman Sachs top lawyer and former Obama White House counsel Kathy Rumler is stepping down after emails showed a close relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. Her resignation takes effect June 30th. In a statement, Rumler said, in part, "My responsibility is to put Goldman Sachs' interests first." The company's CEO said she will be missed. "I accepted her resignation and I respect her decision."
What these files reveal is not just criminal behavior. They expose a system, one where money bought access, access bought protection, and silence kept the network alive. The real question is no longer who knew Epstein. It's how so many institutions allowed his power network to endure.
If they were really trafficking kids, if they were really underground tunnels, why aren't the police doing anything? Because the police are in the tunnels sleeping with the children. Use your brain. The children have told you that the police commissioners, they know their faces, and yet they're 4 years old. But they can point and say, that man, that was the man that slept with me. That's the man. He told me to call him Pawpaw. And you're looking at the chubby commissioner of DC or the commissioner of somewhere. The children have told you 1,000 times. But the thing is that the inside of most people in this country is dead. They pray to their bald-headed god of logic. And the logic itself is so stupid. Well, if this was happening, wouldn't that have happened? This is the majority of the thinking that we are surrounded with. If this was true, if CPS was really trafficking children, I'm sure someone would have done something about it. Who would have done something about it when the people in power actually use CPS to supply the children that they need? If the beneficiary is the one who stands, who has the most to lose, if the scheme is uncovered, why would he do anything about it? If the children are like drugs and the wealthy are like the drug takers, what on earth would incentivize the drug takers to cut off the process by which their drugs are delivered to them? Who educated you? Who educated you and then whispered, this is high-level thinking, go forth and prosper in it?
Who has Jeffrey Epstein's Black Book? FBI. But who? That is, I mean, there's...
Well, that's under direct control of the director of the FBI. Just like the manifesto from the Nashville school shooting of the Catholic school. Yeah. We still haven't seen that, right? It's not the Nashville police or PD saying we don't want this out. The FBI airmailed into that operation and said, this is not getting out. Because they do that because this is another government gangster operation. All these local law enforcement communities get funding from the DOJ and FBI for local programs. And if you don't cooperate, you're not getting your $1 million for this, and you're not getting and that's a lot of money to these local districts. That's how they play the game. That's why you don't have a black book.
But the black book is not just sitting. I mean, that's Hoover power times 10.
And to me, that's a thing I think President Trump should run on. On day one, roll out the black book.
Strategy. No intention.
And not just that. On day one, roll out all of the text message communications we were told were deleted. On day one, play the rest of the video of the pipe bomber. On day, one of the reforms I talk about in government gangsters is you need a central node to be continuously declassifying. This is another thing they do. They overclassify. And I'm telling you, as a former number 2 in the IC, they overclassify 50% of the stuff there to protect the deep state. Oh no, you can't see that. Nothing to see here.
This blonde witch sitting in the White House, Pam, whoever, who pictures exist of her when she was a mere girl, wrapped up in the president's arm. If you've got time, I've got time. It's all over Instagram. You look in her face, she barely looks 20 years old. She is wrapped, bundled like Santa's little present in the arms of the person that you now think she is objectively working for. You don't know that you are living in the age of repaying sexual favors.
I met him before I was Attorney General. I think I actually met him in college, but I didn't know him well then at all.
Go figure. Look at this. Oh, look at this. Look at this. Oh, would you look at this?
This person is head of the Department of Justice telling you, we're going to release the files. And then 5 minutes later, we looked at the files and they're not files. There are no files. This woman is on record as saying,
the DOJ may be releasing the list of Jeffrey Epstein's clients. Will that really happen?
It's sitting on my desk right now to review. That's been a directive by President Trump. I'm reviewing that. I'm reviewing JFK files, MLK files. That's all in the process of being reviewed because that was done at the directive of the president. First, to back up on that, in February, I did an interview on Fox, and it's been getting a lot of attention because I was asked a question about the client list, and my response was, it's sitting on my desk to be reviewed, meaning the file along with the JFK, MLK files as well. That's what I meant by that.
Earlier this year, there's no files. There's nothing in the files. We said that when we got them, if there were files, we would release them. We're not releasing them now because there's nothing in there. And then all of a sudden, and the reporters are rightfully crucifying her because a liar is an abhorrent being, a curse on the face of the earth.
The Epstein files are going to get released?
We hope soon. FBI's been.
Okay.
So,
any dates?
No, you know what it is? There are tons and thousands of videos.
Yeah.
And it's all with little kids. So they have to go through every one.
They're crucifying her and they're saying, no, Miss Bondi, tell us. Because earlier this year, you claimed there was nothing to release. Now, all of a sudden, you claim that there was nothing to release and nothing to investigate. And now all of a sudden, you're telling us that you will now be pursuing cases against who? Then she was like, oh no, we looked again and we found things to prosecute.
Madam Attorney General, do you mean that you will provide all the files by 30 days?
We will follow the law. The law passed both chambers last evening. It has not yet been signed, but we will continue to follow the law, again, while protecting victims, but also providing maximum transparency.
Madam Attorney General, the DOJ statement earlier this year saying that the files would not release mentioned the fact that the review of the documents and the evidence did not suggest that any additional investigation of third parties was warranted. What changed since then that you launched this investigation?
Information that has come for information there's information, that new information, additional information, and again, we will continue to follow the law, to investigate any leads. If there are any victims, we encourage all victims to come forward.
The issue with the new information that you just indicated, is the department seeking information perhaps from the Epstein estate, because Mr. Blanche did not have that information when he interviewed Ghislaine Maxwell? What new information, and would you limit the new investigation to just those named persons that the president talked about, or is this a broad, open-ended investigation?
But this prosecution is coming because of tweets that are being made. DOJ needs to investigate Bill Clinton. The DOJ needs to investigate this and that.
I would refer to the Deputy Attorney General's post that he put out on X, and we're not going to say anything else on that because now it is a pending investigation in the Southern District of New York.
The new investigation by the Southern District of New York U.S. Attorney prevent the department from releasing all of the remaining files.
So we have released over 33,000 Epstein documents to the Hill, and we'll continue to follow the law and to have maximum transparency. Also, we will always encourage all victims to come forward.
Donald Trump is the most transparent president in our nation's history. We are all acting at his directive, and America will be transparent again as well.
I can't comment on whether we have or have not, or do not. I can't discuss that matter, as you know, Senator. I'm not going to discuss anything about that with you.
It's a new day. It's a new administration, and everything's going to come out to the public.
There's not much more we can say about the issue. I don't want to discuss any of that publicly. You can talk to Director Patel about that.
We believe in transparency, and America has the right to know.
I'm not going to discuss the facts of a pending case. You're welcome to talk to the FBI. Senator, I can't discuss anything.
You won't even say whether you talked to the White House about this?
I am not going to discuss any internal conversations with the White House with you, Ranking Member.
I noticed that.
Those files, if those files ever actually hit the public, ever actually touch this internet, that in 2 taps, they can go out to Netherlands, they can go out to Guinea-Bissau, they can go out to Fiji, they can go all across China, all across Russia, all across populous nations and small nations. If those files ever touch the internet and people think that this so-called distraction of an email drop, where the president has fought revealing these files for 2 terms and then all of a sudden pops up and says, all right, let the files be released. And the files are being released with a caveat. What was the caveat, America? The caveat is that certain names were redacted if it was seen that they have no pertinence to the emails. But I ask you, if an email between person A, person B, and person C is circulating with all 3 of them replying to the thread, even if they are talking about person D who's not part of the thread, how can you say that person D, who is of interest to person A, person B, and person C, is not a person of interest and should be redacted from the files? How is that possible? If I hop on an email thread with 3 friends and we're all discussing a vacation in Cabo, how can you say that Cabo is not of interest when Cabo is basically the heading of the email? Trip girls to Cabo? How can you say that let's redact every mention of Cabo because Cabo is irrelevant?
The Justice Department has finally released some of the highly anticipated Epstein files. More than 300,000 pages of documents related to the late convicted sex offender were made public today. They include photos, flight logs, grand jury testimony, and a lot of heavy redactions. Among the photos is this one of pop superstar Michael Jackson with Epstein, and this dinner photo showing Mick Jagger and former President Bill Clinton together. News Nation is digging through the documents. We'll give you the latest breaking news as we find it. But if you think this means it's now case closed, think again. The DOJ was under orders by law to release all the Epstein files by midnight tonight. And even though the DOJ released 300,000 files today, Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche said there are at least a few 100,000 more that have still not been released. Blanche says the DOJ needs more time to make redactions to protect victims. He says the rest of the files will be released on a rolling basis over the next few weeks. Some lawmakers say that violates the law that was signed by President Trump 30 days ago. So now some top Democrats, including Senator Chuck Schumer, are threatening serious legal consequences.
President of the United States of America, who is not here today, I want to send a clear message to you. While I do understand that your position has changed on the Epstein files, and I'm grateful that you have pledged to sign this bill, I can't help to be skeptical of what the agenda is. So with that being said, I want to relay this message to you. I am traumatized. I am not stupid. I am traumatized. I am not stupid.
Despite the December 19th deadline, the release has been criticized for being incomplete. Huge swaths of the 95,000 photos remain unreleased to the public. The House Oversight Committee has stated it is redacting the faces of potential victims to protect their privacy. The Department of Justice released a partial batch on the deadline day, announcing that the remainder of the files would be released over several weeks. This has led to accusations of a cover-up from some lawmakers who argue the DOJ is violating the transparency law.
After so much expectation, this is what greeted those who managed to access the first cache of the Epstein files tonight. About 20% of the roughly 300,000 files were heavily redacted. Previously, they've warned officials who refused to release the files could themselves face prosecution.
If Pam Bondi does not comply with the law, she will be held either in inherent contempt of Congress or subject to impeachment. We will not rest until the law is complied with and justice is served.
Trump's senior legal officials confirmed today's release is not comprehensive, as required by the law Trump himself signed.
The files offer a nuanced examination of the relationship between Jeffrey Epstein and Donald Trump, which spanned approximately 15 years before a falling out in 2004. Trump appears in at least 3 images from the new batch. One shows him at a Hawaiian-themed party surrounded by 6 women whose faces are redacted. Another shows him sitting with a woman on what appears to be an aircraft. Despite the provocative nature of the photos, investigators and journalists note that none of the images released thus far show Donald Trump engaging in illegal activity or provide smoking gun evidence of involvement in Epstein's sex trafficking ring.
Mr. Blanche, I want to follow up with you on what you just said. You were referencing the 15 files released Friday. They disappeared from DOJ's website yesterday, including this photo of what looks like a desk with a drawer open containing photos of Donald Trump. Just to be very clear, to put a fine point on it, why were these files taken down? You're saying it was at the direction of a judge?
Well, you can see in that photo, there's photographs of women. And so we learned after releasing that photograph that there were concerns about those women and the fact that we had put that photo up. So we pulled that photo down.
There's been public reporting that Jeffrey Epstein showed people photos of President Trump with half-naked young women. Do you know if the FBI found those photographs in their search of Jeffrey Epstein's safe or premises or otherwise? Have you seen any such thing?
You know, Senator Whitehouse, you sit here and make salacious remarks, once again trying to slander President Trump left and right.
Government is absolutely going to collapse. I have no idea if it's the current government or anything else, but the way he was talking, he was saying that it's a reality that Americans will have to face one day, and the brutality of the war coming, he says, will be directly related to crimes of the government that will be uncovered. This is definitely, again, another prophecy that has fulfilled. In 2022, when I was revealing what God had said to me, that Donald Trump is not a clean man, right? That Donald Trump is a man of heinous crimes, great crimes, and I quote, I remember the insults and abuse like it was just yesterday. He's a good man. He's the first Christian president we've had in a long time. Everybody knows that Barack was a Muslim. And Bill Clinton was just a lewd and lustful frat boy. This man is a Christian. This man is a real son of God. He had the pastors go to the White House and pray for him. That he allowed them to touch him and speak God's life over him. You're lying. You're just bitter. You just hate America.
Okay, we got to talk about these new Epstein emails about Donald Trump that just leaked from a roughly 15-year period. These documents were released by the Democrats on the House Oversight Committee. Here's email number 1. This is direct correspondence between Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell. This is from April of 2011. And Epstein says to Ghislaine, "I want you to realize that the dog that hasn't barked is Trump. Victim," it's redacted, "a victim spent hours at my house with him. Being Donald Trump, he has never once been mentioned, police chief, etc. I'm 75% there." And Ghislaine Maxwell says, "I've been thinking about that." So Trump at Epstein's house with one of Epstein's victims. And I want to remind you that this also sets Ghislaine Maxwell up for a perjury charge because Ghislaine Maxwell lied to Todd Blanche, Donald Trump's personal attorney turned deputy AG, when they met and said that she never saw Donald Trump with Jeffrey Epstein at his house. So here's email number 2. This is direct correspondence between Epstein and author Michael Wolff, who we've had on the Midas Touch podcast multiple times. Epstein says, "Victim, Mar-a-Lago, redacted." These are all redacted names. "Trump said he asked me to resign. Never a member ever. Of course he knew about the girls," as he asked Ghislaine to stop. This is from January 2019, when Trump was making up this whole idea that he had kicked Epstein out of his club. And so here's email number 3. This is from 2015. This is a direct correspondence between Epstein and Michael Wolff, where Michael Wolff says, "I think you should let him hang himself. If he says he has not been on the plane or to the house, as in Epstein's plane or house, then that gives you a valuable PR, like public relations, and political currency. You can hang him in a way that potentially generates a positive benefit for you, or if it really looks like he could win, you could save him generating a debt." Remember, this is right before the 2016 election. "Of course, it is possible that when asked, he'll say Jeffrey's a great guy and has gotten a raw deal and is a victim of a political correctness which is to be outlawed in a Trump regime." And then Epstein says, "If we were able to craft an answer for him, as in Trump, what do you think it should be?" And Michael Wolff says, "I hear CNN is planning to ask Trump tonight about his relationship with you, either on air or in scrum afterwards." And in FBI 302, that's a document that memorializes an interview with FBI agents. A survivor told the FBI that Ghislaine Maxwell, quote, "presented her to Donald Trump, making it clear that she was available." The emails that were released contain firsthand damning information. In one email, Epstein writes, quote, "Trump is likely to be asked questions soon about me. Supposedly, a girl said that Donald had sex with her at my house when she was underage. She said she has a witness." An email from 2011 shows that Epstein was worried about a girl who went to the newspapers and, quote, "made all this trouble," saying she worked at Mar-a-Lago when she was 15, and Epstein said that he thinks that's a lie and she was actually 17 at the time. In a response from Ghislaine Maxwell, Maxwell says, quote, "I thought you said not to involve Donald." In another email from 2012, a person who is redacted asks Epstein's people, "What does Jeffrey Epstein think of going to Mar-a-Lago after Christmas instead of his island?" In an FBI email with the subject, "Epstein cellmate interview," an FBI agent provides summaries of information he was told about various figures. Regarding Trump, he says, "Redacted stated Epstein introduced her to Trump, who subsequently forced her head down to his exposed penis, which is subsequently bit. In response, Trump punched her in the head and kicked her out." Redacted, remember Epstein introduced her to Trump, saying, quote, "This is a good one, huh?" And Trump responded, "Yes." Regarding Trump's Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick, Simon Andrews reported that Lutnick made his money through Ponzi schemes and money laundering. Lutnick and Epstein were neighbors, and Epstein sold Lutnick a home for $10, which was then sold for millions. Finally, there is a shocking tip sheet of various allegations made against powerful men, including Donald Trump. These are truly heinous allegations, and I want to be clear that they are allegations and we don't know if they were corroborated or not, but honestly, they are so vile that I think I will get banned from this app if I read them. And after we flagged them on social media, the DOJ took them down for a little while before re-uploading them.
Who gave the order to flag records related to President Trump?
To flag records for President Trump?
To flag any records which included his name.
I'm not going to discuss anything about that with you, Senator.
Eventually, you're going to have to answer for your conduct in this. You won't do it today, but eventually you will. I yield, Mr. Chairman.
The number of times Trump's name appears in the files, so it could at least be 1,000 times. Is that right?
The number is a total misleading factor. We have not released anyone's name in the Epstein files that has not been credible.
Director, could it
we
at
have
least be 1,000
released
times?
every piece of legally permissible information.
Okay,
you can
so
characterize the numbers however you want it.
Claiming my time, Director. It sounds like if you don't know the number, it could at least be 1,000 times.
It's not. It's not.
Is it at least 500 times?
No.
Is it at least 100 times?
No.
Then what's the number?
I don't know the number, but it's not that.
Your same mouth is now open, asking for Epstein files to be released. My only question is, did you ever stop to repent and to tell God that you were just a hypocrite with a big mouth? in between the massive flashpoint pivot from he's a good man to release the files, did you ever stop and say, oh wait, we owe Celestial an apology, because she was actually prophesying from God, that God said that this man had great crimes, that he was actually an immoral man full of sins, and that God was strongly rebuking the American people and saying, did I not tell you not to participate in another man's sin? Go and listen to the flaming hot live prayer video that I played in the video called The Citizen Child. Go and hear what God said, that instead of lifting me up to the heavens, it's your own dirty son that you lift up to the skies, praising him instead of praising my son, Jesus Christ. Do you not know that he is a man of sin? Do you not know that he is a man full of crimes? And do you not know that I told you not to participate in another man's sins? Did anybody make a pit stop? Just asking the Marcus Rogers, all the different crews out there that heard from Jesus that he was Cyrus, that he definitely was the man of the golden age. All of Africa, your mouth was so big, right, that Mount Kilimanjaro and Everest could have been your two front molars.
So the great news is now the House has passed it, the Senate has virtually passed it, it goes to the president's desk. I was going to say, we have a lot more work to do. First, who knows how long the House will try to hold it. We should put pressure on Johnson to send it right over to us. Second, the president has said he'll sign it, but who the hell knows with him? He can change his mind on a whim. But third, and maybe most important, and I just had a meeting of 10 senators to discuss this, we got to make sure we get all of the Epstein files, all.
The United States Senate will pass the Epstein Files release bill by unanimous consent without any amendments as soon as it is sent over from the House of Representatives. Chuck Schumer, the Democratic leader, just asked unanimous consent on the Senate floor, and not one senator objected. He then said the Senate has passed the Epstein bill as soon as it comes over from the House. This is a big moment, and I gotta say, a genius procedural move by Chuck Schumer. And remember what MAGA Mike Johnson said earlier. He said, I called Thune and shared our deep concerns, so I'm very confident when this moves forward in the process, the Senate will take the time to methodically amend the discharge petition. The Senate basically told him, F off. They said, get out of here, MAGA Mike. We're just passing this as is. No amendments, no changes.
The question is, will the House suspend the rules and pass the bill, H.R. 4405? Those in favor, say aye. Aye. Those opposed, say no. In the opinion of the chair, 2/3 being in the affirmative, the rules are suspended. The bill is passed, and without
Can I request a recorded vote, Mr. Speaker?
The gentleman from Maryland is recognized.
Yeah, I'm requesting a recorded vote.
On this vote, the yeas are 427, the nays are 1. 2/3 being in the affirmative, the rules are suspended, the bill is passed, and without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid on the table.
Let me ask you one last question. And that is, right after she gives this testimony in front of an FBI agent, among others, she's transferred to a minimum security prison not suitable for a sex offender like herself. Who made that decision and why?
The Bureau of Prisons.
The Bureau of Decisions made it in
prisons.
The Bureau of Prisons decided on their own, without any consultation with Blanche or anyone else, that they were going to suddenly, after this interview, completely unrelated to this interview, completely unrelated to anything she said, move her to a prison not suitable for a sex offender. You want the American people to believe that? Do you think they're stupid?
We are just walking out of the deposition with Ghislaine Maxwell after the House Oversight Committee has subpoenaed Ms. Maxwell to speak to the committee in our ongoing bipartisan investigation into the crimes of Jeffrey Epstein and to hold those accountable who have not yet been investigated and convicted of those crimes. As was evidenced this morning, Ghislaine Maxwell did not provide information to the committee and instead invoked her blanket Fifth Amendment rights. While we are not able to speak to the specifics of what was said within the deposition until the deposition record is made public, it is very clear that she used this opportunity to not only campaign for clemency as she has been doing, but also to send a direct message that she is hoping that people who were sitting in the deposition will transmit to the President of the United States, which is that her silence can be bought through clemency. It is very clear that that is the message that she is trying to send directly to Donald Trump himself, directly. She is telling Donald Trump through her deposition that she is trying to buy her clemency. Now, she did state that she is taking and invoking her Fifth Amendment rights because of a pending habeas petition before the Southern District of New York. But let us be clear, her case appeals have already gone to the United States Supreme Court and they have been denied. She is not being released from jail unless, of course, Donald Trump buys what she's selling. So we want to be clear that she is exactly where she's supposed to be in terms of her conviction, and she needs to go back to the prison where she belongs. Now, we have a lot of questions for Ms. Maxwell with regards to what actually happened in Epstein's affairs, who was directly involved in the sex trafficking, money laundering, and influence peddling scheme that she and Jeffrey Epstein were involved in, how Donald Trump was involved, and whether or not he committed any crimes himself, as did his many associates who are named in the Department of Justice files. Let us be clear that Donald Trump is not only named thousands of times in the latest release from the Department of Justice, he is named over 38,000 times in the files that were released 2 weeks ago alone. And we know that that only represents half of the files that the Department of Justice has in its possession, including files that were used for direct investigations of perpetrators, people who committed crimes, people who were co-conspirators in those crimes, and individuals who knew of those crimes. We know that there are multiple administration officials, including Howard Lutnick, Elon Musk, who served as the appointee for the Doge efforts in the White House. We know that the Secretary of Navy. We know that Steve Bannon. We know that there are more than 36 associates, family members, and individuals directly associated with Donald Trump named in those files. Now, there are now at least 9 or 10 other countries across the world that have opened investigations or forced their leaders to step down because of their mere association with Jeffrey Epstein. And the United States government is engaged in an active cover-up of the largest sex trafficking scandal and influence peddling scandal in the history of the United States, and Donald Trump is right at the center of it. And the person who is living to provide the evidence, who knows what is going on, is trying to invoke the Fifth to buy her clemency. So let's be clear on what we saw here today. This was an effort to essentially try to secure her pardon by keeping her mouth shut. And we will not allow this silence to stand. It was announced late last week that the Department of Justice would allow members of Congress to view the unredacted files of the files that have been released, and many of us will head to the Department of Justice today to look at the memos and internal documents of Department of Justice that were removed from the website to understand why names of survivors were unmasked and why and who the Department of Justice is shielding as they have redacted files that include perpetrators and co-conspirators.
People believe that they're watching one man's actions. They believe that they're watching one man's decisions. They believe that they're watching one man's vitriol. And there's a strong contingent, both across the Democratic Party and the Republican Party, who believe that they are watching what they call a distraction from the Epstein files. But it's typical in America to get the picture inverted, because most people don't understand that the picture is always inverted before it's shown to us, because they know the natural suspicion that's in most Americans, at least most Americans who try to participate in critical thinking. They know that if you invert the picture before you show it to us, most of us will invert it back and then say, I've solved it. The Epstein files are the distraction. It's not the other way around. People feel that the president is so terrified of having the fullness of the Epstein files come out that he's going around starting conflicts and wars to create a distraction so that everybody will take their mind off finding out basically which president sleeps with which child. And do you really need the Epstein files to know that? Have I not been Epsteining you all along, telling you for years and years that these people will sleep with anything under the age of 2, sodomize it, not one of them, but 10 of them on one 4-year-old child, and then take tokens of handkerchiefs of that poor little one bleeding to death. And then if the child doesn't survive it, then that child still has a role to play in having their body cut up for parts, cut up for beauty processes of the rich, of the famous. Like, why do you need to see Epstein files to believe what God has already told you was in the Epstein files before we even knew that there was an Epstein files for me to refer to? I never had to refer to files. I told you that there were snuff films But now that people are leaking information and the files are coming out and saying that, yes, snuff films are real, I was talking about that stuff in 2019, saying that I had never heard of such a thing, a process of killing a human being on camera, live, for the entertainment of whoever can afford to buy the aftertape in my life. These were all things that Yah told me directly or showed me in dreams, being meticulous to document the process. But now America is like 6 years behind and feels like in order to be really sure that these things are real, that they're not urban legend, you need to see the files. And so everything that is happening in geopolitics, people feel, oh no, the files is the main thing. And then all the geopolitical stuff is just, it's just a distraction from the files. But they inverted the picture before presenting it to you, knowing that you would flip it. The geopolitical stuff is the real stuff. The Epstein files are the distraction. The Epstein files are the president's own slow crucifix that his handlers have introduced into the narrative to let him know that not only will he do what they want as they toy with him using the legal mechanisms of will they release it, will they not release it, will they slow leak it or not. It's to keep your eyes fixed on what you think are the main things, the president's own slow crucifix that he will surely be crucified on, because there's no pleasing the people that he works for. You can dance to any tune that the unseen hand, the shadow government wants, the deep states. You can dance to any tune they play. And then after you have done everything that they've asked you for, they will still double cross you.
Florida ranks third nationally in calls for help for human trafficking, where young women and children are enslaved and abused. I knew we needed all hands on deck. Businesses and hospitals to spot it, our great law enforcement to stop it, and tougher penalties to punish it. We're taking on Medicaid fraud, pill mills, gangs, and more. And I'll fight to put human trafficking monsters where they belong, behind bars.
Pam Bundy, our Attorney General.
You've got the best lawyer's job in America because your mission is justice and your clients are the American people. But to promote justice for the people, you've got to listen to the victims, like the women seated behind you today. Those are just some of the hundreds of survivors of Jeffrey Epstein's global sex trafficking ring who are demanding that the truth be told and are demanding accountability for the abusers who trafficked and raped them. You still haven't met with these survivors. So you're not showing a lot of interest in the victims, Madam Attorney General. Whether it's Epstein's human trafficking ring or the homicidal governmental violence against citizens in Minneapolis, as Attorney General, you're siding with the perpetrators and you're ignoring the victims. That will be your legacy unless you act quickly to change course. You're running a massive Epstein cover-up right out of the Department of Justice. You've been ordered by subpoena and by Congress to turn over 6 million documents, photographs, and videos in the Epstein files, but you've turned over only 3 million. You say you're not turning over the other 3 million because they're somehow duplicative, but we know that there are actual memos of victim statements in there, and you also took down the Department of Justice's prosecution memo from 2019. So it's clearly not all duplicative, but even if it were, why not release it? Just release all the duplicative stuff. In the half you did produce, you redacted the names of abusers, enablers, accomplices, and co-conspirators, apparently to spare them embarrassment and disgrace, which is the exact opposite of what the law ordered you to do.
But we're going to move back to you.
I bet we are.
Yes, of course, because you're here to testify. That's what the whole point of this endeavor is. So of course we're moving back to you. It is all about you.
This isn't a circus. This is a hearing. I find it.
How many have you indicted?
Excuse me. I'm going to answer the question.
Answer my question.
No, I'm going to answer the question the way I want to answer the question. I'm not going to get in the gutter for her theatrics. You don't tell me.
Yeah, I did tell you because we saw what you did in the Senate.
Lawyer. Listener's name was added back.
Within 40 minutes of me catching you red-handed.
Red-handed? There was one redaction out
where
of
he's
over
listed as a co-conspirator.
I'm not going to commit to anything to you because you won't let me answer questions.
I want to know, were there any underage girls at that party or at any party that Trump attended with Jeffrey Epstein?
This is so ridiculous. This guy has Trump derangement syndrome.
I think we get it. You don't want to answer the question.
No, you don't get anything regarding public safety.
Thank you.
Nothing.
Thank you for the insult.
24 hours out and Washington is still wrestling with what happened yesterday because
Oof. The Attorney General of the United States came to Congress to submit her leadership and her department to congressional oversight. Often that oversight is tense. Yes, often there are fiery disagreements. Often there is political grandstanding. But there are usually some answers and some respect and some deference to the separation of powers, even in the face of hostile questioning from the opposing party, which happens a lot. Yesterday, though, there was none of that for the opposing party or even for a Republican who was pushing back at her attempting to deflect an Epstein question by invoking the stock market. Quote, when the Attorney General of the United States is asked why she has prosecuted no one related to Jeffrey Epstein, and this is her answer.
This administration released over 3 million pages of documents, over 3 million, and Donald Trump signed that law to release all of those documents. He is the most transparent president in the nation's history. And none of them asked Merrick Garland over the last 4 years one word about Jeffrey Epstein. How ironic is that? You know why? Because Donald Trump, the Dow right now is over $50,000. I don't know why you're laughing. You're a great stock trader, as I hear, Raskin. The Dow is over 50,000 right now. The S&P at almost 7,000. And the NASDAQ smashing records. Americans' 401ks and retirement savings are booming. That's what we should be talking about. We should be talking about making Americans safe. We should be talking about, what does a Dow have to do with anything? That's what they just asked. Are you kidding?
Time for the country to get onto something else. Now that nothing came out about me, other than there was a conspiracy against me, literally, by Epstein and other people. But I think it's time now for the country to maybe get onto something else.
What would you say to people
like
who feel like they haven't gotten justice, Mr. President?
Something that people care about.
You're a walking joke. Everybody should just start cackling at the next UN meeting. Because it's impossible to take this place seriously. But when I was prophesying in 2022 that America will be worse than a banana republic, is this not a comedy movie show? A person in power fighting allegations and using the arms of the state to deflect attention away from himself. And then this is the nation that says, no, we might do those things, but we won't have any third term power. That's not what God says.
Even Speaker Mike Johnson had a little bit of an issue, who, when asked about Bondi and that printout we showed you yesterday from Mila Jayapal's Epstein search history, well, he admitted that DOJ probably shouldn't be tracking members when they're viewing unredacted materials.
What she had was a printout of the search history when I went to the Department of Justice Annex to look at the supposedly unredacted Epstein files. And in that room where there are only 4 computers and there were 2 people monitoring everything we did, they had to log you in. And apparently they logged you in with separate IDs and logins so that then Pam Bondi could go back and look at exactly what you searched, which is a violation of the separation of powers between the DOJ and Congress, the administration and Congress. And essentially, they were spying on us. She had that printout in her burn book.
She didn't answer anything. She came here just ready to talk about the Dow Jones and the NASDAQ, which seems kind of crazy to me.
This guy has Trump derangement syndrome. He needs to get, you're a failed politician. You don't get to reclaim time when you don't, when I don't answer a question the way you want.
This goes over 4 administrations. You don't have to go back to Biden. Let's go back to Obama. Let's go back to George Bush. This cover-up spans decades, and you are responsible for this portion behind me.
I want to know, were there any underage girls at that party or at any party that Trump attended with Jeffrey Epstein?
This is so ridiculous, and that they are trying to deflect from all the great things Donald Trump has done. There is no evidence that Donald Trump has committed a crime. Everyone knows that. This has been the most transparent presidency. He's the one that asked that those files
I'm reclaiming my time. I got your answer. You said there's no evidence.
Trump asked
Chairman, please stop the clock.
Stop
the clock.
The legislation. This is
Time belongs to the gentleman from California.
Okay. I'm going to put up another document from a witness who called the FBI's National Threat Operations Center, because I believe you just lied under oath. there is ample evidence in the Epstein file.
Don't you ever accuse me of a crime.
I believe you just lied under oath, and this is all on videotape. You said there's no evidence of crime. I'm showing you. Here is a witness statement who called into the FBI's Threat Operations Center. He drove Donald Trump around in a limo. He overheard what Donald Trump said to Jeffrey on his cell phone. He was so angry, he was going to stop the limo and hurt Donald Trump. And he met a girl who said she was raped by Donald Trump and Jeffrey Epstein. She later had her head blown off, and officers at the scene said that could not have been suicide. No one at the Department of Justice interviewed this witness. You need to interview this witness immediately. Epstein should rot in hell, so should the men who patronized this operation. And as we sit here today, there are over 1,000 sex trafficking victims, and you have not held a single man accountable. Shame on you. If you had any decency, you would resign right after this hearing concludes.
Was the president aware of Secretary Lutnick's ties to Epstein when he chose him to lead the Department of Commerce? Was he aware?
Chris Malin was a Border Patrol agent.
Okay, so I'm going to conclude that the president, in fact, did know about his ties because he was the next door neighbor.
Shame on you.
Oh, for goodness sakes.
You're
this
from
is
a tiny,
pathetic.
beautiful
This is
state.
pathetic, Mr.
Committee will be in
Chair.
order.
I am not asking trick questions here. The
You got your
American
5
people
minutes.
have a right to know the answers to this. These are senior officials in the Trump administration. This is not a game, Secretary.
I'm Attorney General.
My apologies, I couldn't tell. By 2008, we knew that Epstein was a convicted sexual abuser. And we now know that Lutnick went to Epstein's Island in 2012. How was that not a deal breaker for the president? And why aren't you asking questions of the Commerce Secretary about what he saw when he was at the island, which he lied about not ever going to? Why are you not asking these questions?
This is not under attorney-client privilege because it was sent from Jeffrey Epstein to Ghislaine Maxwell. Will you commit to publicly providing the unredacted version of this so that the American people can understand the extent of Donald Trump's lies about his relationship with Jeffrey Epstein?
You're about as good of a lawyer today as you were when you tried to impeach President Trump in 2016. Have you apologized for that in 2019?
So will you unredact this? Will you
were
unredact
lead
this?
counsel on that. Privileged.
I'm asking you, will you unredact this?
Privileged.
Privileged, of course.
Our witness who somehow is a lawyer but does not understand how it works with witnesses. I'm not really sure what law school she went to and what all kind of cases she tried, but typically when you come into a space and somebody's a witness, then they sit there and they answer questions instead of asking questions. And then we also have this objection that we use as lawyers called non-responsive when a witness fails to actually answer the question. But nevertheless, let me address the survivors, because that's exactly who they are. They are not victims, they are survivors. Let me say thank you for having more courage and moral clarity in your pinky fingers than the entire Department of Justice. We are currently the laughing stock of the world, partially because of the failed leadership within the DOJ, as we see kings and queens falling everywhere around the world. But we don't know the basics of right and wrong in this country. But let's circle back to you protecting pedophiles and creeps, because I want to talk about the president and his possible involvement with Jeffrey Epstein. Now, I don't know what the president might have done with Jeffrey Epstein, but unlike this administration, I believe that facts matter. So let's talk about the facts. Fact number one, Donald Trump is one of the most named people in the Epstein files. At least 5,000 files contains more than 38,000 references to Trump, his wife, or Mar-a-Lago. Fact number two, Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell made young girls available to Trump on multiple occasions. For example, according to this file, Ghislaine Maxwell presented a young girl to President Trump who spent more than 20 minutes apparently flirting with her. Here's another example. This shows notes from FBI investigators that describe Jeffrey Epstein transporting a victim to Mar-a-Lago to meet with President Trump, where he bragged to Trump that, quote, "This is a good one." Now, I'm not saying that the president is a pedophile, but there is a lot of evidence in these files that suggests that he's very close friends with a lot of men who are pedophiles. What's crazy about all of this is just that this is a big cover-up.
November 8th is when America feels safe again. Because winning this election means reclaiming something to which I've dedicated my entire career. The rule of law. Laws that make our neighborhoods safe. Laws that make our economy strong. Laws that apply equally to everyone. There was one redaction out of
He's
over
listed as a
4,700, and we invited you in. This guy has Trump derangement syndrome. He needs to get, you're a failed politician. I find it interesting that she keeps going after President Trump, the greatest president in American history. And if they could maintain their composure. You don't tell me.
Yeah, I did tell you because we saw what you did in the Senate.
You're a lawyer, not even a lawyer.
Committee will be in.
You're obsessed with Donald Trump. You have Trump derangement syndrome. All of you who participated in those impeachment hearings against Donald Trump, you all should be apologizing. You sit here and you attack the president, and I am not going to have it. I'm not going to put up with it. The Dow is over 50,000 right now. The S&P at almost 7,000. And the NASDAQ smashing records. Americans' 401ks and retirement savings are booming. That's what we should be talking about.
Trying to intimidate and punish these ladies.
Your time is up.
Forward.
Are you still talking about Jeffrey Epstein? This guy's been talked about for years. You're asking, we have Texas, we have this, we have all of the things. And are people still talking about this guy, this creep?
The damage your pride has caused. Have you repented? Or are you still going to come here and say, oh no, well, I heard the Kamala prophecies, but then, I wasn't sure, and he seemed like the lesser of two evils. You are a lying hypocrite. You heard what God had in store, and you simply joined the melee out there who thought that they were big enough to seek God and turn the outcome. And now what do you have? The lawnmower has eaten your entire throat. Everything is bleeding out. Everything that you had, he has chopped it out with lawnmower blades. Your chest is on your chest. Now you're the victim, right? The victim of what? Was it not your own pride? Did you repent? Or did you think that I was going to have sympathy for you and your wickedness against the Lord when he's speaking to you? Go to the people who promised you sunshine, because I've always prophesied doom and gloom and bad news, right? So at least I'm consistent. Go back and ask them, where is the sun? How come it's not coming? Here come. Go and ask them. I just want to know, did anybody stop and repent? Did anybody stop and go back to God and say, I am a hypocrite and I hate your voice in the earth? Because when I heard it coming forth, I said that he was not a federal agent. I said that he was not an evil man. I said that he would never have crimes, that in fact, it was President Biden who had all the sexual sins. But for our clean son, nothing was wrong. Now, all of a sudden, handwritten notes to buy human beings. Human trafficking in the extreme. Redacted files. Release the files. Release the files. As you are yelling, release the files, O moral one. Did you repent to God for your hypocrisy, or will we see you on the last days standing before the Lord being judged for being a hypocrite, a sinner, and one who rebukes God when he's revealing truth to you that you don't know, but he knows? Make sure you clean that up before you die, because it will stay on the record if you don't. Prophecy fulfilled.